Stand by.
حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the program. This is Let's Talk, and with Ramadan around the corner, there's huge focus on lots of organizations, not only in South Africa but all around the world, creating awareness of the plight of the underprivileged. We're going to be talking to visitors from abroad, a Lebanese and a Palestinian who have collaborated, and they're doing amazing work in refugee camps. We're also going to be talking to author, activist and producer Faisal Mamdou. We're waiting for him. We think he's stuck in traffic. So as he makes his way to us, we have two gentlemen in the studio with us, also activists in their own right, and they're here to talk about the commemoration of the Nakba. Of course, I'm talking about Razak Nurbay. It's the whole Palestinian issue is something that's very, very close to his heart, and he has a partner who has helped him launch a newspaper, a first of its kind in our part of the world. But let's introduce the guys to you, inshallah, and we'll get this interview on the road. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and shukran, it's a pleasure to be on your show, Julie.
Always a pleasure to have you here because you do amazing work in the community. Qasim Adam, salaam alaikum. First time I meet you, but
Sure.
obviously doing some wonderful work. And now we believe there's a paper targeted at the Muslim community right here in Johannesburg. How did this start? Why is it important to have a newspaper targeted at our community?
Well, I've been in the media business for the last 30 years, and we've been watching all the other papers and just found out that the Johannesburg Gauteng area doesn't have its own Islamic newspaper, and it was always a passion for me to do an Islamic newspaper, and the name, the message was always on my brain since 30 years
Alhamdulillah.
back. After watching the movie, the name was called The Message.
Right.
And that name stuck in my mind, and it became a reality.
So how long has the newspaper been in circulation already, or has it only just been introduced?
It started in October last year. Mm-hmm. This is our 5th edition coming out.
And is it a monthly
paper? G.
All right. You have the right person as a partner as far as this newspaper is concerned. He's been active in the community for many, many, many years, and he obviously knows the community inside out, and he knows the needs of the community, and he's none other than Razak Nurbay.
Correct.
Lovely to have you here. And why did you decide that you needed to put your name behind this venture?
Well, foremost, my relationship with Qasim also goes back many years, approximately about 30 years. And I've always been contributing to his other paper, which is called the Joburg Express. So I've been contributing.
I've seen that and have
Yes.
heard of it, yes.
And I've been contributing randomly articles to that particular paper. And when the discussion came about of the Message newspaper, it was pretty exciting. And it was not going against any other Islamic publication as such, but we just felt that there was a need within Gauteng, Johannesburg area particularly, for a newspaper of this stature. And it was always in the pipeline. We've been talking about it, speaking about it, and we said, there's a lot of content that we get from the other papers, but it's basically content that's based in for a KZN, or content that's coming out of the Western Cape, but not much of local content. And of course, from humble beginnings, The paper is still in its very, very infancy stages. And because of all my activism, I've been an activist since school days.
Of course.
And I've been involved in many other activities. We just had this past weekend the Bosman Masjid Fete that took place. And I think that's around about in its 18th year, which I'm a founder member of that fete as well.
Alhamdulillah.
There's been many milestones in my lifetime, one of them being a former councillor.
Of course.
Within the city of Johannesburg, which I'm not any longer there. But obviously a lot of my work is still continuing that I was busy with.
So you're keeping your hand in that. You're going to see all of your projects to fruition, inshallah, and then you'll hand over. Inshallah. Am I reading you correctly?
It's not going to be much of a handover, you know. What I've also basically done is we're busy establishing now an organization called Citizens Active Network, which we're going to be registering that organization as such, and inculcating within the citizens to become more active and become more participants, specifically in our democratic process. And more so specifically from our particular community as such, the predominantly Muslim community as such. There's been little work done, you know, as far as the democratic process is concerned politically. And I'm not speaking of years gone by. I mean, our forefathers were very, very much involved in that. We were at a function recently and we put an article in the Message newspaper also. 3 stalwarts from our communities, all 3 of them being doctors, struggle heroes, you know, Dr. Kachalia, Dr. Remsaluji, Dr. Isub Jasad, where they were honored, they were given humanitarian awards by the Nosarka Foundation. And this is the type of projects that we are looking.
Inshallah. I kind of feel or believe or read between the lines that you are considering joining one of the other political parties.
Yes,
it's in the pipeline.
Yes, it's in the pipeline. There has been a beckoning, there has been calling from 3 other political parties. Obviously, is to apply your mind correctly and see which way you're going to go.
Sure.
We know that currently within our democratic process, there's a lot of political instability as such, you know.
True.
And where can we kind of like fit in? And obviously, I'm weighing the options and looking at each party's policies, what's their manifestos, what's their missions, and so forth. And at the end of the day, I will thereafter decide, you know.
Inshallah. Let's hope and pray you make the right decision. A fit that will talk well to you and the people who follow you. Kasim, let's talk about the newspaper, The Message. Is that a free publication?
It's a free publication.
All right. And up to now, I know that it's your 5th edition.
Sure.
How many copies do you churn out per month? And what has the response been like?
Well, we turn out between 25 to 30,000 copies per month. We have a phenomenal return from the public, and letters are pouring in and inquiries are being made. We had inquiries from Cape Town to launch the paper in Cape Town. And just recently I got a letter from KZN, they want the paper in KZN. And so we're looking for forwarding and branching out to these areas soon, inshallah.
So that would be a collaboration between the Western Cape, Natal and yourself, which means that you'll tailor-make the content for those specific areas. Or would it be the same paper that goes throughout the country?
No, each area will have its own edition.
To talk to the local communities.
We will mix it up.
All right. I'm wondering, what are you offering that is different and unique in The Message, which other local community papers is not offering me, apart from the Islamic concept?
Well, we're offering quite a lot. There are organizations that are still starting up and they don't have money to advertise, and we just put in quite a few this month in the Ramadan issue, and they were quite shocked when I said there's no charge for you. like Sisters of Hope. We just put in a very nice article for them last night into the paper, and they were like very thrilled with what we are doing. And so inshallah, people that don't have money, that want to come in and need to send us articles and things, are welcome to send in at any time at no charge.
All right, we know that publishing and distributing of newspapers is a costly affair, and you very magnanimously have accommodated people who can't afford to advertise with you right now. And we know that it's advertisements that actually carry a newspaper.
Correct, yeah.
Who is funding that shortfall? Razak?
The shortfall is basically being self-funded. We don't have donors as such at the present moment. I mean, we are busy speaking to people within various areas within the community. And we must also say that, look, a lot of our advertisers have been very, very accommodating. We're also not going in with rates that are very exorbitant rates. We know the current economic climate, the way it's trending. And we also know that a lot of people speak to us and say, you know what, we are on social media. But there is still a certain percentage of people out in the community that still read a newspaper.
And let me just come in there and talk about social media platforms. You are up against very stiff competition, are you not? And very especially younger people. I'm wondering if they even bother reading any newspaper for that matter, because they consume their news via social media platforms. So what does that competition look like? And what are you going to do that is unique and different to attract more people to your paper?
Well, foremost, we're already on social media. We are on Twitter at the moment. We have a Facebook page as well. So people that do not have access to the physical newspaper as such, they can go onto the digital newspaper, and the entire paper is on social media digitally. As far as the aspirant young people are concerned, we're calling them and we're asking for a lot of young journalists. We've had discussions with quite a few of them to contribute articles to the newspaper as such. And even from the many events and functions that we are attending, we are asking, there are many stalwarts also in our community that have been very, very charismatic in their journalistic career, both on the Islamic side and even maybe on the other sides. So we're approaching and speaking to all of these people. And while we have the opportunity now, you know, we're asking young and aspirant.
Okay, let's go for an ad break.
Sure.
I'm talking to Razak Noorbai and Kasim Adam. They're here to talk about their newspaper called The Message. It's targeted at the Muslim community right here in Gauteng. Stay with us. We need to go for our first ad break. This is Let's Talk on ITV Networks. We're coming to you live from Sunning Hill in Johannesburg. Our guests in studio are Razak Noorbai and Kasim Adam. They're here to talk about the new newspaper that's been launched, targeted at the Muslim community right here in Gauteng, Johannesburg. Still to come, Faisal Mamdou to talk about his work, his activism as well. It seems as if we have a whole host of activists in the studio today. And right after we're done with Razak and Kasim, we have another couple coming in, Diana Al-Khalili and I think it is Hussam Mohammed. They from abroad and they here to talk about their work in refugee camps in the war-torn Middle East. But right now, Razak and Kasim, welcome back. Kasim, you want to say something about articles and people on social media networks. What is it that you want to say to them?
Well, all I want to say is the stuff that is sending to social media, press media is still quite very handy. As far as Caxton is concerned, press media is still tops, and people must read. Kids must read, and not just
feel and smell the newspapers,
yeah.
and the ink. Over the past 5 editions that you have churned out so far, what do you believe is some of the best stories that have talked to you? We can't go into detail, but could you mention a few of the stories and who's written those articles?
I'll pass it over to Razak Nurba to speak
Razak, over
about.
to you.
I think two of our articles is the one article was racism, that self-servicing and prejudice, and this article, it was contributed from Jamiatul Ulama.
Oh, mashallah.
And, and
Okay.
it's an excellent read. And more so, I think the article is also, we know that 24 years into our democracy currently, we are still so much entrenched in the racism ideology, of black and white. That was an excellent article. One of the articles that was also, and for us personally, it was a great highlight.
Front page articles.
Front page. And this was the visit by Ali Abu Nima, battling for justice in Palestine, the founder of the Electronic Intifada.
Right.
This event took place at Wits University. And I think we were both very, very thrilled, because I have been in correspondence with him via email and so forth.
And who wrote that article?
Okay, this article we have, one of our journalists is known as Yaqub Mullah. He's an elderly person, he's about 72 years old. But he was one of the earlier journalists with Drum Magazine for many years.
Right.
And he was even given an award in New York when he was in that.
So you've got great caliber of journalists on the paper. People can look forward to reading stuff with a sound content. So it's not just a fly-by-night operation that's going to vanish within the next few months. You've got solid citizens, solid people with solid background in the journalism industry that write for you. And I see there's another article you want to talk about.
Yes, this article once again written by Yaqub Mullah. And this was the Ahad Tamimi jailed for slapping an Israeli soldier. This event was also taken at Constitutional Hill, which we were part of. And as you know, I'm very, very much involved in Palestinian activities.
Which we're going to talk about in a minute or two.
So this was another highlight in the paper. What we basically did also with some of the editions, like with the Israeli apartheid, we devoted the entire content of the paper to the Israeli apartheid.
So hard news, hard-hitting stuff is what you're covering. Let's look at what that is all about, and then we'll also focus on the softer stuff and how we highlight achievers in the community. I hope you're doing that as well.
Oh yes, we have one year now of Muslim pioneer doctors honored as struggle heroes,
which you've spoken about just now.
This was by the Nusarka Foundation,
right?
And we know our pioneer doctors, Dr. Isuf Jasad. I mean, well known in the community, and all of these men are well into their 80s.
Alhamdulillah. What are you doing to attract the younger people to the paper, to read and to contribute articles?
With the younger people, we're looking at content that's appealing to the younger generation, and that's why we're asking a lot of younger generation to come forth with articles in that. We've already spoken to basically 2 sort of journalists under the age of 25 to contribute articles to the newspaper, and they are very, very willing, and they've been obliging. So that's another step that we're looking forward to. Obviously, the youth in every community, in every society, they are our future.
Absolutely.
And we cannot look at them and shelve them on one side. So, and especially they've got such inspiring minds now lately, so they can teach us a lot as well.
They're born intelligent, aren't
yes.
they? Yeah. What can we hope to look forward to? Because I know once your latest edition goes out, work has already started on the next edition. So, Kasim, what can we look forward to in the next edition as far as front page is concerned?
Well, this edition is more focused on Ramadan.
Right.
And more articles about Ramadan and our forefathers, what happened during the month of Ramadan, all the big nights and so on. It will be quite a nice issue to read.
MashaAllah, we look forward to it. Saturday, the 12th of May 2018, a few days' time, you are again at the forefront of Join the Great Return March. It's the Yom An-Nakba Day. Tell us about that, and why have you continued your fight for the Palestinian people?
This was planned already. It was in the pipeline, the Great Return March for Yom Nakba Day. As you can recall, last year I did my book launch on Palestine.
Of course.
Also, just a day or two before a Nakba Day, which was around about the 13th of May as well. The book was launched. And from there, I decided that, we cannot let it lie idle. We have to do something else with the Nakba Day coming on. And coincidentally, I was in discussion with Advocate Ziad Patel, who was very vocal also on the Palestinian issue. He's traveled abroad on many occasions. And we just had a brief discussion on his previous trip to Beirut and what's transpiring with the embassy of the US wanting to be moved on the eve of Nakba to Jerusalem. And this was already in the pipeline, and we had this brief discussion, and they had formed the interim committee called the Great Return March. So it kind of sort of like blended in well, and we've joined up with them, and we said it's going to give us also quite a bit of boost from the aspect of the message that we're doing this. And if you see here, we also have the Al-Quds Foundation that's endorsing us. And the Al-Quds Foundation has also endorsed my book on Gaza, which I've made my book waqf. So everything will go to them and various other organizations. We have South African Jews for Palestine. That's, we have BDS and PSA. Two of the major role players in as far as the Palestinian issue is concerned. And the reason we said we wanted to have this march, which we made an application for quite some time ago, and I was actually last night, I had a very restless night because you need consent from your ward councillor as well, and alhamdulillah that came through this morning.
All right, so tell us about the march. Where is it going to happen? When should people start congregating? What's going to happen pre and post the march?
Okay, pre-march we've got now, we said come sign the petition on Saturday on the 12th of May at 2 p.m. And this petition is to honor Ahed Tamimi. They were brought here last year by
Of course,
Shamshan.
we featured them on the show.
On many occasions.
Yes, absolutely.
And I was personally also involved in quite of their events and that. We know what transpired with Ahed Tamimi slapping the Israeli soldier and that. And we just felt, it's apt to see, let's see, and what is the aspirations of the community as such, We had this in a pipeline already. I already had this in 2015 when the city of Johannesburg did a twinning agreement with the city of Ramallah, when they placed the statue of Madiba. And in Ramallah we have what's called Mandela Square. Obviously we had a change of dispensation within the city, but I didn't allow that to sort of lag behind, so it's always been there. So Saturday preceding the march at 2 o'clock we're having a signing petition.
And where will that be?
That will be in at Queen's Road, where the Queen's Park is, in Mayfair, where the BP garage is.
Right.
So we're asking communities to come out there from 2 p.m. onwards, sign our petition to rename the street in favor of honor Ahed Tamimi. And I said on this flyer also that Ahed is an icon of Palestinian resistance in the mold of Leila Khalid. And we know you've interviewed them, and they were there, they were here last year, and I really admire these kids from the village of Nabi Salih. In my book I've got, in Palestine the word fear, what it means to Palestinians and its meaning to us. Fear to us, if we spell out fear, F-E-A-R, it means forget everything and run. In Palestine, and specifically with the children in Palestine, is face everything and rise.
Alhamdulillah, and that's where we have to leave it. We've reached the end of our interview time. Fascinating to talk to both of you. Lots of success, ongoing success with the Message newspaper, and we'll be following your progress as far as the political party you're going to be joining, and continue the amazing work. I know you've helped a lot of people in the community with all sorts of issues that they've had as far as council, etc. is concerned. So keep it up. Thank you indeed. Lots of success.
Just on a closing, Julie, we want to make a request to our masajids, particularly this Friday in the Jummah khutbahs, to speak on the Nakba.
Inshallah.
And highlight the Nakba. And obviously we have a whole host of speakers at this event. We have people from the Christian communities as well that's coming to speak. So it's not particularly per se to say Palestine is a Muslim issue. You know, it's at a crossroads and an intersection of three Abrahamic faiths. It's at an intersection of three continents. And we're asking everybody, come out in your numbers.
Inshallah.
Bring all your family and friends and come sign the petition.
And that's where we leave it. Shukran
Shukran.
so much for being with
Shukran.
me. Much success with the newspaper and all your future endeavors, inshallah. That was Razak Noorbai and Qasim Adam talking about the message, the newspaper, and also the march. Join the Great Return March this Saturday at 3 o'clock, but you know, he has requested you come at 2 o'clock, and that's happening at Queen's Road, Mayfair, Johannesburg. Still to come, Faisal Mamdou and our visitors from overseas.
Jazakallah.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. I now have two visitors from abroad. It is Diana El Khalili and Hussam Mohammed. They're visiting our country and they're here to promote an amazing cause. They do work in refugee camps in the war-torn Middle East, and they're going to share their story with us. And of course, they're also going to ask us to support them in every which way we can. So inshallah, let's see what you and I can do to make a difference in the lives of those little children, the voiceless women, the voiceless girls, and of course the men and boys as well. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Now, Diana, you Lebanese, and Hussam, you are Palestinian.
Yes.
When, how did this collaboration happen?
Okay. Assalamu alaikum. We are so happy to meet you, and we are so happy that you are in South Africa. It's a very nice country. I am from Lebanon, and Hussam, he's Palestinian. We work in an NGO, Ghiras, for Society Development. And in Ghiras, we meet, me and Hussam.
We have met there according we have experience in the charity work and humanitarian work, and subhanAllah, in this Ghiras and in this NGO we have met to continue our way in this domain, in the charity and humanitarian work.
Alhamdulillah, you're going to tell us who this NGO is,
Yes.
but you both come from amazing backgrounds.
Yes.
You're a teacher.
Yes.
You've also presented radio programs
Yes.
yourself. You've written a book which you're going to tell us about, and you have a passion for children.
Yes.
And obviously, it has to be obvious that you're so passionate about children because you're a child of Palestine,
That's
and you
right.
have seen the atrocities subjected to Palestinian people, and particularly the children.
That's right.
So tell us why you as a Palestinian felt you managed to get out. You're now living outside of Palestine, I
Yes.
presume.
Yes, that's
and
right.
you're working tirelessly to make a difference in the lives of not only Palestinians, but Syrians and other refugee camps. And I think you watched my previous interview,
Yes, that's
and you
right.
have seen how we as South African Muslims are
That's
so
why I
very
feel that,
passionate and committed to the cause of Palestinians and the refugee camps.
Yes, that's right. In the beginning, you know that children, or the Convention of Children's Rights, that the children have the right to live safely, and they have the right to have their own home, their own environment, safe environment. But in Palestine, especially in Palestine, the Palestinian children have no one of these rights. Not even the safe environment, not even time for playing or having their own living their own life or their own age stage. They are, as can I describe them? They are early men. The children in Palestine are early men. When you see, especially nowadays in the contest in the borders of Gaza, you see the children facing the Israeli soldiers in the return back contest. Mm-hmm. This is you feel that those are not children. Those are men, not children. Mm-hmm. That's why my passion for the children, for helping them to do anything to help them, to give them a new life, to give them a new beginning, and to do our best to, in little bit, to get something different or something special for them.
What is your background, Hussam?
I'm a teacher, English teacher, and I have a diploma in management. You know, I have choice to get teacher, especially for the small kids, to have to. I like children and I like to communicate with them. From this I had, and also continue, especially I was in an organization called Takaful. They are special for children, they work for orphans and needy children, and continue and realize for the family at all. From our passion of and for the children and love for them.
You both come from teaching backgrounds,
Yes.
and obviously I always say that teachers are teachers because of their love of children, and you've just expressed that now as well.
Yes.
What is the situation like of the children in Palestine and in refugee camps? Are they a generation lost? And I'm talking from a teaching perspective. You as teachers, what do you believe needs to be done so that they are not a generation lost? What can you do? What sort of work needs to be done in Palestine in refugee camps to make sure that those kids have some form of education?
Okay. If you are going to start by the Syrian refugees in Lebanon, you know in Lebanon there are more than 3 million Syrian refugees that they live either in the camp or in apartments. According to the kids, it's really a disaster. Sometimes I look to the kids and I think, what will be the future of these kids? You know that 50% of the children only in Lebanon as Syrian refugees, only they can go to school, and the other 50% they can't go to school. They reach 10, they are 10 or 12 years old and they can read or write. It's really a catastrophic situation. What we can do for these children? Everything. We have to provide for them everything. Education, it's the most important thing. Because without education, how can they come back to Syria and rebuild their country? If they can't read or write, or they can't understand what happened around them. It's really a difficult situation. They need love. They need that we can take care of them.
And I should imagine a lot of those children are orphans, are they not?
Yes, they are orphan or needy families, or they come from needy families. Also, you know, the healthcare. Many children, many Syrian refugees, they are sick, and they have maybe and they can't take the healthcare, the necessary healthcare that they need as children. They don't have anything to play with. When we met a child, and her dream is to have maybe a ball. The ball of the child is to have a ball.
Something we take for granted in this
Yes.
country and elsewhere in the world.
Yes.
As Diana is talking about the situation in the refugee camps, and you make a comparison with the Palestinian situation, how different is it? Which is the worst situation of the two?
According to the Palestinians in West Bank and Gaza, the situation is a little bit easier than those in the Syrian refugees camps, because there are schools, there are education institutions in Gaza, but also they are not served a lot. I mean, in Gaza, for example, UNRWA have the schools for the children, but nowadays UNRWA has lessens their services presented to the Palestinian refugees, especially in Gaza. For example, we have 1.3 million Palestinian refugees. They are displaced from the lands of 1948 and from West Bank.
Refugees in their own
In
land.
Gaza, yeah.
The irony of the
This irony of
situation.
the situation. They are refugees in Palestine.
Yes.
Yes. So UNRWA of the United Nations is responsible to serve them in healthcare, in education.
So those basics are in place.
Yeah.
Hussam, what is the situation? I'll come back to in a minute, Diana. The situation when these children complete school in Palestine, what does the future look like? Are they able to go to maybe college or university? And once they've got that further qualification, are there jobs available in Palestine for them, or do they need to leave Palestine?
No. When finishing the school, they will go to the university. There are universities and good universities, Islamic University and other universities in Gaza. When they finish, some of them, about 70% of the students in the universities have finished their studies, but they couldn't take their diploma or their baccalaureate because they don't, or they can't pay the funds for this. So they are graduated without a certificate.
Right.
This is a big problem we face there for the students of the universities.
Which means that they can't go on to find gainful employment.
Yeah.
What needs to be put in place for them to be certified and find meaningful employment and make a difference in Palestine?
Yeah, because, you know, they need a lot of help, especially for, we call it, we have to get their certificate from prison, to prison certificate. We are working in some projects to get funds for those students, to help them to get their certificate and to have some good opportunities for employment. But even inside Gaza, these opportunities are very few. So they must go out from Gaza to work.
Inshallah, you do know that the South African Muslims are working very hard, as hard as they possibly can, digging very deep into their hearts and pockets to make to make a meaningful contribution. When you make a comparison to the Palestinian situation, you indicated that it is imperative that we get these children educated because they are the future leaders of Syria. Yes. They need to go back into the war, into that shell.
Yes.
It's now a shell, it's no longer a country, and they need to start from scratch. They need to build Syria.
Yes, I want to say something that the unemployment rate in Gaza is 43%, and between the youth is higher, is around 63%, and 50% of the children in Gaza, they need psychological support. You know that Gaza suffers from blockade since 12 years old. And many children, they lost their lives because they can't get the medication. They can't go out Gaza or even inside Gaza because around 45% the shortage in medicine in Gaza Strip. Yeah. And during these 12 years, Gaza also suffered from 3 military attacks. Mm-hmm. So these children, they live the war. And you know what the war means?
They're in a permanent state of trauma. Let's go for an ad break. I'm talking to our overseas visitors. It is Diana Al-Khalili and Hussam Mohammed. They're here to sketch a picture, a very dismal picture of life in the refugee camps and, of course, the open-air prison, which is Palestine. Stay with us. And welcome back. Diana Al-Khalili and Hussam Mohammed are our guests. Hussam is from Palestine, but he's a refugee. He doesn't live there any longer. And of course, the lovely Diana is a Lebanese person, activist, with these issues very, very close to heart. Issues of refugees. We're going to check who the organization is that have brought them out here to South Africa. And I think also very close to their hearts is the issue around the working women, the mothers and the girl children in the refugee camps and how they're able to keep their families together and what is it and how is it that they survive day to day. Diana?
About GIRAS
organization. The organization.
Okay, the organization. GIRAS for Society Development is a Lebanese organization, NGO, non-profit organization, established in 2012. We focus on women and on families headed by women. Why women? Because you know that the women are the half of the society and they raise the other half. So when you empower the woman, I think you empower the whole society and you can make a real change in the community.
Obviously.
And why the family is headed by women? Because in the Arabic and Islamic countries, you know, there are always crises and wars, and the number of the families headed by women increase day after day and year after day. So it's a need to help these women and to empower them, the women and their children. In Ghiras, we have 4 programs, and we try through these 4 programs to cover all the needs of the families: Ata, Thimar, Afaq, and Lamsa. Ata, which means to give the others something. The most important project in Ata program is the family sponsorship. You know that especially in the countries and cities that suffer from crisis and water, the family, they need like stability income. So they feel more safe and more secure. So it's the most important project for us until we can empower this family and she could be independent, financially independent.
What sort of empowerment, what sort of skills do you give these women?
Yes, we are going to speak. And in Ata also we have relief and seasonal projects like Ramadan projects, Adha projects, winter projects, and so on. Afaq, you know, to empower the family, they need education and they need training. Training including the vocational and the life skills training. It depends on the needs of the family and their life conditions and their lifestyles, what exactly they need to be empowered. And then Thimar, it means like fruit. Thimar, we change the family or the woman from relying on others and on the aid of others to independent, to be productive. So we can help her to have her own project so she can be financially independent. And finally, Lamsa, it means touch. It's like a tenderness touch. Oh. We have both the health care and also the psychological support. So in this way, we can provide almost all the needs of the family, and especially the woman.
That's a huge undertaking, and I should imagine you need the resources to meet all of those needs, and I guess that's one of the reasons why you're here in South Africa as well. And inshallah, I know that our community here will dig deep into their hearts and pockets, inshallah, and make this possible. The other thing that Diana talks about, and she's mentioned it a couple of times, and I realize how important it is, and you as a refugee yourself would agree, and this is the issue around the psychological support. Because if that is not in place, you're talking about a totally traumatized and broken generation.
That's right. In Palestine, in Gaza and West Bank, the children there faces many shocks and many psychological problems, especially when maybe especially in the military attacks on Gaza and the 3 wars that Israeli have on Gaza. We have some situations, some cases for children that some of them saw his family or her family died in front of them. Some have their father or mother lost them. Many cases we had and many problems we have. So we have tried to have some activities, some ways to solve this problem, to solve these traumas for our children. Because if we let them like this, it will be difficult. It's
going to haunt them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Diana, obviously you need a huge team, health workers team, psychologists included, to come in and start working with these families, with these refugees. And obviously it's not going to be possible to train all of the refugees. It's just not possible to cover that many people.
Of course.
Are you getting enough foreign aid in way of psychologists and healthcare workers coming in to work with the refugees?
According to the psychological, maybe in some countries they are interested in these projects. It's not the same in other countries. we organized like psychosocial support in Ghiras the last month. It was really great impact on the women. I was surprised by the results. Really, they change a lot before and after that project. Even how they face their problems, even how they maybe the way they treat their children. So it's one of the most important. It's one of the most important projects. One of the women that benefit from our services in Ghiras. I was talking to her. She's Lebanese, but she's widow. I told her that Mirna, we need to help you so you can get your own project, and then you can work and you can be independent and so on. She told me, yes, I agree, but before, help me to cope with my new situation. Help me to deal that I can accept that my husband is absent, is not here anymore. Because he's dead suddenly. So it's very important that we can learn how to cope, how to deal, how to accept our new situation, to then work and to can maybe make some training or education.
All right, so who's brought you to South Africa? How long are you going to be here?
Yes.
And I presume you're going around to give the talks and create the plight and the needs of the refugee camps.
I would to thank a lot Zahira from Caring Women Forum
of course,
for
our
their
own
invitation.
She's a colleague here, yes.
And also we are going to thank a lot Gift of the Givers organization, because they support always our project, and especially the family sponsorship project.
Now, I need to commend them as well, Caring Women's Forum, Gift of the Givers, and a whole host of other organizations in South Africa are doing amazing work, especially, and I'm proud to say, especially the women. They are absolutely hardworking, their hearts are in the right place, and they truly they move mountains, literally.
And
Hussam, sorry, did you want to say something?
Yes, for any donation or contribution, they can contact Zahira from Caring Women Forum.
Inshallah. And of course, she's talking about our very own Zahira Bam Ismail, who presents iTrend here on ITV. Phenomenal work being carried out by Zahira and her team. They've brought out obviously Diana and Hussam to South Africa, so we can get a first-hand account of just how dire the situation is in the refugee camps. And no doubt, Hussam's going to now tell us how much longer they're going to be here in South Africa and where you can meet them and get to hear the stories firsthand. Hussam, how long are you going to be here?
We will stay here till 15th of May. And inshallah, we have a good tour for certain places, for some NGOs. We will meet some donors also in South Africa. And we came here, and our hearts are full of hope about what we heard and about what we have read about the people of South Africa, and especially the Islamic people of South Africa.
And I promise you, you won't go home empty-handed. You'll go with a full heart and full pockets, very definitely. Final thoughts?
Thank you very much for this interview that allowed us to give you a little bit about the picture and how is the situation in Palestine, in the Syrian camps in Lebanon, and also the Palestinian refugees in Lebanon. Thank you very much.
Our du'as and support with you all the way. Final thoughts from you?
I want to talk a little bit about the Palestinian refugees in Lebanon.
All right, we have just a minute to go.
Our supervisor in Burj al-Barajne camp, this morning she sent me something happened in Burj al-Barajne. You know, in the Palestinian camps, the line of electricity and water are together. So she sent me like a child, she has an electrical shock due because of that, so that our children, they can die because of that, like they can die due of a candle in Palestine because there is no electricity.
And that's where we leave it. Shukran very much for being here.
Thank you
And
so
like I
much.
said, you're going to very definitely go home with a very full heart and full
Inshallah.
pockets. Inshallah, all the best. And a very, very big thank you to the Caring Women's Forum. Zahira, thank you
Yes.
for arranging this interview. Amazing people sharing their very heartfelt stories with us. And I know they've gone straight to the hearts of the South African Muslim community. Still to come, Faisal Mamdouh, also an activist. He's going to talk about art and literature and, of course, the book he's written and his work. So do stay with us. And we're into the final segment of the show this morning. And I think it's quite a coincidence that we've had activists on the show from the start right up to our last guest. And he's Faisal Mamdouh. He holds an MA in the sociology of development. And he's recently been appointed communications executive with the Cyril Ramaphosa Foundation. That's just 2 lines of what he does. He's been an activist from the time he was a young man, and he is an author, a director, a producer. He's been involved in filmmaking. He's also been involved in the Fitas Festival. So we're going to try and unpack all of that. What a fascinating life. And we're going to ask Faisal, what is it that makes him tick, and why back in the day he has decided to choose this as his path in life. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
Unusual path for, the times that we were growing up in the then Fitas and Fordsburg and all the group areas in the time of apartheid.
Yeah, I mean, I think as we know, under apartheid, black people didn't have opportunities, particularly in the arts. I know when I was growing up, the kind of options available to us were, you had to become a teacher or, certain limited professions, become a doctor. Not all of us are cut out for that, although I did do some teaching in the 1980s at a time when there was some shortage of teaching personnel. So I've always been interested in the arts as a young person.
But it wasn't something our parents encouraged at the time.
No, you're always told that there's no scope for black people.
Absolutely, yeah.
Even if you chose, I remember at some point I was interested in architecture as an option, and some teachers said to me, no, there's not much scope for that for black people, I think through my political, involvement, and I suppose I've always had a social interest, so I pursued, the humanities. In the early 90s, I got a scholarship, and I did this master's at Essex University in the UK. But while I was there, I thought I needed to reconnect with my creativity. And coming back, I made a choice to get involved with documentary film.
Now, prior to your documentary filmmaking, and I also want to talk to you about the book. You are an author, and you are an author, aren't you? I have got that right.
Yes, I've published. Well, I've written on a freelance basis, for newspapers, popular magazines and so on, and I've contributed a chapter to a book on social cohesion. I haven't authored a book per se myself.
Okay. Were you not perhaps, I seem to think that you were involved in the pictures or the book in the 1976 uprising, the picture of Hector Peterson being carried by. There's a big story there, and you're involved somehow or the other.
Yes, well, I made a documentary film.
Okay. I thought it was the book. Okay.
About Umbuisa. Umbuisa's the young man carrying Hector Peterson. And after the events of '76, he was forced into exile.
There's a lot of theories about whether he's alive or not.
Yeah.
There's also a story that he's living out somewhere in Canada, etc.
right.
What do you know about that?
Well, it's inconclusive. He disappeared from Nigeria after he went to Botswana, and then from there got a scholarship to study in Nigeria. Was very unhappy in Nigeria, and then disappeared. And no one actually knows, what became of him. A couple of years, well, quite recently, in fact, the story surfaced that someone who'd been in detention on immigration charges in Canada for like 12 years, a really long time, maybe Umbuisa. This was the feeling of one of the immigration officials. And then there was some involvement and communication with the South African government. DNA tests were done. That proved inconclusive. And so it's still uncertain who is this individual, who this immigration official thought maybe Umbuisa. And I mean, I've heard accounts of at some point he seemed to suggest that he was, at other points denied that he was. Unclear whether he's South African or not. And he's now been released and is somewhere in Canada. But there's no certainty at all about whether he's
Faisal, you've had an
so.
amazingly rich life. You've been exposed to, and I guess it's because of your love of the arts that you've truly been exposed to so many different aspects of art. We'll get to some of that in the course of the interview. But let's get back to your early years growing up in Fitas and how you became an activist, because not everybody got involved. You had pockets of people that decided that perhaps I can get involved and I can make a difference. And how did your parents respond? Because, I mean, you're putting your life at risk by becoming an activist.
Yeah, I think it's, in some ways, when I reflect on it, Fitas, as you know, was like a District 6 community, it's a Firetown community, multicultural, very strong values of community caring and sharing. There weren't sharp divides along class lines as we experience today. So that must have shaped, I think, one's outlook. There must be something that we kind of imbued from all of that. I mean, I was only 8 or 9 years old when we were forced out. But in those short years, some of that must have seeped into my consciousness. And then I think the Group Act was devastating for all of that. We saw, sharp religious divides, like in a place like Lenasia, between Hindu and Muslim. We were moved to areas for richer people and poorer people, divided along class lines.
And that should never have happened, seeing where we came from. And it is so much more evident today than it ever has been before. And you ask yourself why. 24 years later, we all have what we've been, hoping and dreaming and fighting for. And we have now our freedom. This is now an apartheid-free country. And yet we are so divided.
Yeah. And that's the kind of the irony of it. I mean, I suppose it's to do with just the way the world has developed, globalization. I remember once sitting in a panel discussion with an elderly woman from Fitas, reflecting on what kind of place it was, and we were talking to a group of, I think they were German academics, and she said we didn't know better. And I think that's so true. We didn't have any sense of anything else. That was our reality, that was our normality, and there was that, we didn't know better. But as life changed and circumstances changed, all these other kind of divides, crept in. So coming back to the earlier question then, I think in a context like Lenasia, it was also lacking in many facilities and services. One began to get involved in some of the community issues. 76 happened, that was my politicization. and that's how I got involved politically.
Is there any moment in time or event that you believed brought you to a crossroads in your life and you decided, I need to change direction and go this route, because if I don't, who else is going to do it?
Yeah, it wasn't as conscious as that. I mean, I think, to be honest, I feel I was rescued by the struggle. I wasn't doing particularly well in school. I suppose there's this whole thing of being more interested in the arts and, you know, not applying myself academically. And our schooling system didn't provide for those other interests and passions and, you know, capacities. So when, so I think, you know, I was in danger of falling through the cracks, potentially. And when 76 happened, and that was my kind of awakening, or reawakening, I got involved with community work, I got involved with political organizations, began devoting myself, and I say to my kids as well that really was my education, you know. I feel I really grew and developed through.
And what
through
an
that
education.
experience. Yeah.
When I think of kids today, you spoke about, you know, you being rescued by the situation, then the political situation. You kind of wonder who or what is going to rescue our kids, the 9-odd million unemployed youth, and what's their future going to look like. But all of that right after the ad break. I'm talking to Faisal Mamdouh. We're talking about his life as an activist, his life as one of the first few black producers and directors in the country post-apartheid, and the type of work he's done and the opportunities he might have been given post-apartheid. Stay with us. We're talking to Faisal Mamdouh. He is an activist. We're talking about his fascinating life. I think he was one of the lucky ones. He kind of found his niche early on in life and was able to move on in the right direction and make something of his life. So stay with us and let's hear his story. Fitas is very close to your heart. But before we get to Fitas, I posed a question about the possibly lost generation that we're referring to now. We're talking about the 9-odd million people or youth, if that is the correct figure, according to Stats South Africa. And they're saying that's the amount of people that are unemployed. What kind of future, what do you believe needs to happen to save that generation?
But I think that when we talk of young people, you know, the recent Fees Must Fall campaign was a bit of a wake-up call. We had been basking in this, in some ways, a sort of false glow of our post-apartheid democracy, and what the generation, as the young generation, has done is to remind us of the need to deepen our democracy. It's put the spotlight of issues of inequality and all those failures around, you know, providing employment for young people, etc. So I think the agency young people have shown, you know, just kind of confirms young people across the world as a motive force for change. We've seen it in the Middle East and so on, you know, the ways in which young people drive change. And I think that's just an objective fact. In our own context, it was 76 generation. Prior to that, you know, the likes of Yusuf Dadoo and so on, you know, transformed the Congress movement. So historically, in our own context and internationally, young people have shown a lot of power. And in some ways, I think young people, you know, through process of struggle, and constructive engagement, you know, because I think obviously in a democracy, there are facilities that one can use positively and constructively as well, you know, to try and shape outcomes which will meet their interests and the interests of society more broadly. But these are very real, deep, difficult challenges, you know.
Do you worry about your children and our youth? in terms of opportunities and future?
Not so much at that level, but in some ways I have thought at times that the new South Africa has failed them, because they've had such a passion for this country and a love for this country, and you know, obviously growing up on our stories, you know, a certain kind of outlook and commitment, and then just through their daily life experiences, you know, that can be challenged. So, for example, crime, issues of crime, and so on, you know.
Let's talk about, you were detained twice as an activist. How old were you at the time and how did you cope? What was going through your mind when you were detained?
Well, the first time I was 17, so I turned 18 at John Foster Square, you know. And that was, I think there was sort of the famous barn incident in Indonesia. Harun Patel is someone you might know.
Heard of.
Yes, and he was leading a protest meeting against the banning of the Black Consciousness organizations and the death of Steve Biko. And the venue had been, you know, we couldn't get access to the venue, so we were sort of forced to gather outside, and that was the excuse to actually, it was illegal to do that. And we were held for like 3 days over a weekend and then charged under the Riotous Assemblies Act. Came as a huge shock. It was the first time I'd experienced police violence and I had been beaten. And I think, you know, I suppose one got some sense of an appreciation of what our parents in the, you know, early years had experienced. In the 60s, for example, the heavy repression, and there was some fear following the barn incident and a kind of a withdrawal, you know, in some ways from political activity. But then we kind of rejoined and you know, continued thereafter. Takes me back. I mean, you know, at that age, about exactly what I was thinking and feeling.
But you weren't going to give up your activism.
I think my parents were fearful. I did withdraw for a little while, and then I got involved with an organization called Time to Learn, and we were, you know, helping young kids from Thomsville, which was a slum locality in Indonesia, with homework and study support, and slowly through involvement with Time to Learn, you know, got involved in community work and back into, you know, political activity. The later time was state of emergency. There was an extended period of detention. And again, just like people talk of Robben Island, for example, as an indication. We had Lalu Chiba with us, imprisoned with us. He had been on the island for 19 years before that.
How long were you on the island?
I wasn't on the island.
You weren't on the island?
Yeah, but I was. We were detained at what is called Sun City, Joburg prison for about 8 months for the length of the state of emergency, and. Again, just learned a lot through that experience. You know?
Now, I know you're busy currently writing an anthology feature film. Maybe it's been complete. I'm not sure how far.
Still busy with it.
You're still busy with it. What's it all about, and why this anthology? What's the story you're going to be telling the world?
Yeah, it's an anthology film, so it's 3 short stories. Independent short stories, but linked as one feature, because each of the stories are based on, you know, kind of draw, and they're embellished obviously, but they draw on true stories, and each of them is the story of a bomb, and of some sort of MK, you know, Mkonje Sizwe armed struggle related experience. So it's really.
When are you hoping to complete it? And I presume the national broadcaster would carry a film like this?
Well, yeah, it's going to be a long journey. I mean, it's already been, a couple of years of writing. I have had support from the National Film and Video Foundation for the script. So the script is in its final stages now. And then on the basis of that, one would obviously would need to raise the funding to make the film. So I'm hoping people out there.
Inshallah, let's hope they
support
definitely.
The project,
absolutely,
yes.
absolutely. And sadly, that's what filmmakers. I mean, it's all about the funding. If you don't have the funding, you can't tell these important stories that the world needs to see and hear about. We have about 2 minutes to wrap up time. Fetus is very close to your heart because you were born and raised there before the displacement, obviously. And I also know that for a while we had something called the Fetus Festival. How meaningful is that to you? Does it make a difference in people's lives, people who lived there many years ago? Should it continue? And do you want to see Fetus revived again?
I mean, I don't know if we can ever revive Fetus again, but I think we always need to remember where we come from. And it's just amazing that up until now, people talk with such fondness and have such warm memories of the kind of life they lived there. And that's just a constant reminder, of perhaps ways in which we've lost our way. We talked earlier about the values we shared of community caring and sharing, the ways in which we were united across class lines, across racial lines. Look, there were issues and problems in Fetus as well, so we can't romanticize,
of course,
but overall it was a very positive experience, and I think that's almost like in our DNA. People still, it's very much at the core of our identities. It remains very much at the core of our identities. So the Fetus Festival was one way of reconnecting with that. And
did it work?
I think so, definitely, because it wasn't just about a walk down memory lane. It was about challenging the destructive consequences of the Group Areas Act and to reclaim, all those good things that we experience in a place like that, and to see how in the present we can then, make for a better present and a better future. So I think it's a very important reference point, and the Fetus Festival was just one way in which we sought to reconnect and reclaim, a good past, and for it to have relevance for us in the present and the future. There might be other ways. People might do it in other ways.
We've got a minute to wrap up. Do you think that we're going to see more festivals in the future, or was it kind of, once off 1 or 2 years in the running and, been there, done that, time to move on?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's... We struggled to get it off the ground. There was no funding. We put in various proposals. Eventually we said we're not going to buy into any kind of, give anyone kind of gatekeeping power. We will do what we can with what we have. And we funded it out of our pockets for 3 or 4 years. We couldn't sustain that. And in some ways I think some of us have moved on. Other people might pick it up. And I think there are younger generations actually picking up and doing things in relation to Fetus, which we encourage.
Let's hope that it does happen. And we're going to be watching this space. We're waiting for that anthology feature film. Have you decided on the title?
Not quite.
We'll catch up with you later, inshallah. Please give us a shout when you want to talk some more about it. Thank you so much for coming to share memories with us and touching lives. We definitely, through our storytelling, we touch lives and we do make a difference. So shukr for that. Thank you for being on the show. That was Faisal Mamdouh, ex-Fetus, a place that's very close to his heart, and of course, still an activist, and will continue being an activist, talking to us about his life. Fascinating indeed. And of course, it's time for us to wrap up. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. And it is time for us to wrap up. So from the Let's Talk team, as always, take care on the roads and Khuda Hafiz.
يا هلا 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 ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا